Philippine Open Government Partnership launched its first co-created National Action Plan in December 2019. The international open government commitments that embody the plan aim to contribute towards addressing pressing public problems and achieving a people-centered, clean, and efficient delivery of public services and building a high-trust, peaceful, and inclusive society. Consistent with this aim, implementation of the National Action Plan started at the beginning of 2020, but this was hampered by the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in the first quarter. The expected delays in implementation of action plans of member countries prompted the OJP Criteria and Standards Subcommittee to issue a resolution allowing extension of plan implementation to another year until August 31, 2022, for the end of term of the cycle 2019 to 2022. The revised Philippine Open Government Partnership National Action Plan is characterized by the same co-creation process that made the former version of the plan the most extensive and inclusive of all the action plans the country had. This revision follows the basic requirements of the OGP's Participation and Co-creation Toolkit 2. Leveraging on available technology and innovation in the midst of the pandemic, the consultation process conducted with commitment holders, non-government partners, and other stakeholders was done using different online or virtual platforms. As government and civic organization operations revert to virtual means for the communication, consultation, and collaboration aspects, the process of National Action Plan revision followed with the orientation on the guidelines of extended implementation and the succeeding bilateral meetings and consultations done online through various online platforms.
Many of us have given so much of ourselves to make sure that this happens. So methodologies have been used, a lot of strategies, many policy changes, many program trusts have been tried and tested, all for the sake of making government at all levels, national to the local, to work for the benefit of the constituents in the communities.
Under the revised 5th National Action Plan, the government and non-government partners are committed to collaborate to achieve the following. Strengthen citizen participation in governmental processes. Enhance transparency, accountability, and participation in educational service delivery. Increase government data utilization through the publication of high-quality datasets on the Open Data Philippines portal. Establishment of an efficient and effective technology-enabled participatory validation and reporting mechanism for selected government infrastructure projects that support the monitoring and evaluation policies of the department. Institutionalize transparency and accountability in the extractive industries. Passage of the Freedom of Information Law and localizing the Freedom of Information Program. Fostering industrial peace through the proactive and inclusive engagement of workers and employers in the formulation and/or review of labor and employment policies, working together to create a holistic and integrated approach to improving the lives of children and their families, ensuring Indigenous peoples' mandatory representation in local legislative councils and policymaking bodies, and stakeholders' engagement in harnessing the value of PhilJEP's data. With respect to the COVID-19 response and recovery efforts, the Presidential Communications Operations Office added a milestone to facilitate the proactive disclosure of all COVID-19 related information from national government agencies. Its co-commitment holder, Youth Alliance for Freedom of Information, has additional milestones on the conduct of consultations on the FOI bill, convening of a multi-sector network of CSO advocates for FOI, creating a tech-based tool for feedback from citizen experience on access to information, and creating a tracker of public accessibility of statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth among agencies. The Department of Education considered the distribution of computer packages to learners and educators as an additional focus area for participatory monitoring. Its CSO Education Cluster added activities related to lobbying for an increased budget for the last-mile schools in succeeding years and monitoring of domestic resources of local government for the implementation of identified critical education inputs in the last-mile school. PS-Link Public committed to conduct surveys among public healthcare workers on the extent of the implementation of the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, specifically on their benefits and other entitlements.
So I call on each and every Filipino, be with us at the front lines of public sector reform. Be active citizens. And as our partners for change, let's continue to ask ourselves difficult questions. Let's listen to each other and co-create targeted and sustainable solutions. Join our crusade and let's go beyond numbers and letters, beyond complicated theories of change, beyond policy papers and lip service. Together, let's deliver felt and measurable results and make government work better for the Filipino people.
The Philippine Open Government Partnership, open by default, policy by the people, accountability for results. The Philippine Open Government Partnership launched its first co-created national action plan in December 2019. The international open government commitments that embody the plan aim to contribute towards addressing pressing public problems and achieving a people-centered, clean, and efficient delivery of public services and building a high-trust, peaceful, and inclusive society. Consistent with this aim, implementation of the National Action Plan started at the beginning of 2020, but this was hampered by the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in the first quarter. The expected delays in implementation of action plans of member countries prompted the OJP Criteria and Standards Subcommittee to issue a resolution allowing extension of plan implementation to another year until August 31.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our discussion on open contracting data on COVID-19 purchases in the Philippines. How can we collaborate to strengthen procurement? This discussion is co-organized by WISOL, Citizens Budget Tracker, and the Right to Know Right Now Coalition. This morning's discussion is also the first session of Day 2 of the Open Gov Week. May temang Sustaining Open and Participatory Government in the Time of Pandemic. Ang pagdiriwang ng Open Gov Week ay nagsimula kahapon May 17 at magpapatuloy hanggang sa Biyernes, May 21. The Open Gov Week is an opportunity to come together with government reformers, leaders, and advocates from around the world to share ideas, discuss solutions, and commit to new levels of citizen participation in government to respond to and recover from the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. And thank you very much to the tech for that happy tune during the house rules. Usually we don't like house rules, but that was a very happy tune, so thanks. Again, welcome to this morning's session on open contracting data on COVID-19 purchases in the Philippines. How can we collaborate to strengthen procurement? Co-organized by VSOLV, CBT, and START2KRN. The the COVID-19 pandemic has tested the resilience of procurement systems around the world as governments try to deliver critical public goods while mitigating the risk of relaxing procurement rules to cope with the demands of this emergency. What lessons might we learn from the experiences of the Philippines? With the support of HIBO Southeast Asia's Open Up Contracting Program, researchers from the Citizens Budget Tracker and WeSolve's Data for Empowerment Program construct and open for public use a new data set on COVID-19 related government contracts worth 20 billion pesos or approximately $400 million, representing 60% of the total value of publicly available contracts as of August 2020. In this session, we hope to generate interest and demand among civil society and government practitioners on the power of open contracting data to improve procurement systems in the country and agree on the next steps on the research. We also hope to discuss ways in which civil society, the government, journalists, the academe, all of us can collaborate to systematically verify and improve the quality of procurement data so procuring entities can buy better and be more responsive to people's needs in the next rounds of COVID-19 purchases as well as in future emergencies. We expect nothing but an engaging session this morning. Our list shows that registrants are almost split even between government and non-government participants. Aside from those joining us here on Zoom, we are also streamed live on Facebook, specifically on the pages of WeSolve, the Citizens Budget Tracker, and the Right to Know Right Now Coalition. We request again everyone to please put your microphones on mute so as not to distract our speakers. If you have any comments or questions, please type them in the Zoom chat box or the Facebook comment section. We have volunteers who will curate them and we'll make sure to give time to read them later in the program. Today's main presentation is based on the research titled Strengthening Procurement in the Time of a Pandemic, Evidence from the Philippines. This is co-authored by a young team composed of Kenneth Isaiah Ibasco Abante, who is the corresponding author. He's from the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies of the Ateneo de Manila University, the co-head of practice of WeSolve, and the coordinator of the Citizens Budget Tracker. Lawrence Anthony Go from Action for Economic Reforms, John Michael Laba, Head of Financial Reporting and Local Budget Tracking of the Citizens Budget Tracker, James Russell A. Ramos, Procurement Research Team of the Citizens Budget Tracker, Rinabel Reyes of the National Institute of Physics of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, Ella Mariel Rosales, Procurement Research Team of the Citizens Budget Tracker, and Jose Rueda IV, from the Department of Quantitative Methods and Information Technology of the Ateneo de Manila University. The research was supported by a grant from HIBO Southeast Asia's Open Up Contracting Program. To present the premises and key findings of the research, please welcome three of the co-authors from WeSolve and Citizens Budget Tracker, Mr. Kenneth Isaiah Basco Abante, Ms. Ella Rosales, and Mr. Jose Rueda IV. Kenneth, Ella, and Jose.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ma'am Joy. It is indeed a joy and an honor to be here with you this morning to present our research, Strengthening Procurement in the Time of a Pandemic. Let me start by saying that this study is a labor of love from a community of 24 researchers who worked with 36 people in government, journalism, academe, and civil society. From our committed research assistants, for those who guided and reviewed the preliminary findings last year, and including this entire community helping us with this report launch during Open Government Week. Thank you. We commend especially the Government Procurement Policy Board and the DBM PhilJeps for their open attitude when we showed our early findings to them and they commented on this study last year. We note, of course, that any errors of analysis are the sole responsibility of the authors and not of the people that we consulted here. We are dividing this presentation into three major parts. First is we'll run through the key findings. Then we'll talk about how we were able to get these key findings through our technical analysis. And then discuss proposed ways to collaborate to strengthen procurement. Let's start with the key findings. The context that we operated on as we did this study last year was that the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act budgeted nearly 390 billion pesos for national emergency response programs. We estimate that at least 40 billion pesos, or at least 10% of this, is subject to emergency procurement. And as with negotiated procurement under emergency situations, the challenge is always how do you balance the urgent delivery of critical public goods and control so that you can make sure that the procurement is done in the right process. So what we did was we studied all publicly available purchase orders, notices of award, and annual procurement plans in the GPPB portal, or the Government Procurement Policy Board portal, as of August 3. We studied out of the 36 billion contracts, around 20 billion pesos of this, and we study a balanced sample between high-value contracts and a random sample of small contracts. What we do, and we will release this by the end of this presentation, is to create a new item-level dataset of more than 2,800 transactions from 581 contracts, where we collect 120 variables from contracts and 11 variables from items, including prices of these goods. We note a very important limit of this study, that there are no available delivery receipts and no available supplier eligibility documents in the publicly available data. So we can comment on systemic risk, but we cannot conclude, and this is very important, we cannot conclude fraud or corruption. And we entrust this work to members of the community who can do deep dives on the complete data. So again, while our research cannot do these things, while we can't cover delivery of goods and services, why we can't replace the deeper procurement monitoring work already done by social accountability groups and grassroots civil society movements, we think that our research may help with identifying and mitigating risks to the system for COVID-related purchases that are new and in future emergencies, and to identify priority areas for civil society watchers in bids and awards committees, given their limited time and resources. So, given that introduction, let's dive very quickly into our 5 key findings. The first key finding was on completeness. Around 76 transactions worth around 1 billion pesos have missing web links to their purchase orders, notices of award, or annual procurement plans. The most important finding in our study is this. More than 66%, or 13.3 billion pesos of item by value did not have sufficient descriptions or specifications to warrant price or quality comparisons. And we use a 15-step method to check this risk and the quality of the document. The third is that medical and social amelioration goods in our sample comprise 99% of the value. Fourth is duration. The typical or median procurement period from award to end or reported delivery took 9 days, but we cannot physically confirm the delivery of the goods. And it's a very important finding Around 71% of items were procured at high prices and warrant a second look from authorities. There are possible savings of around 319 to 550 million pesos if high-priced goods were bought at the median, or more conservatively, median plus 10% of the median market price. But we note also, again, very important disclaimer, no, there are possible differences too, no, like quality, import costs, and other factors. And we will discuss these technical analyses later. Our three key recommendations are that we propose ways to engage civic movements to improve data quality using our 15-step method. We think that we can make open contracting more inclusive by learning from, listening to, and supporting grassroots organizers who engage in local procurement and expenditure monitoring. At the system level, we think we can focus and improve a lot on how we aggregate demand, provide model specifications for critical goods, and mitigate potential price gouging. Please use and build on our Philippine Open COVID contracts dataset by continuing the study for contracts after August 3. Data scientists here would be familiar with machine learning models that can look and automate the data, test them to our dataset, which we've checked, and then test them on new public contracts. All right, so those are our key findings. So that's our presentation in 7 minutes. But now we need to go into the methods and limits. So that's the second part of our presentation. Why is it so important to sample contracts? It's because we did not have enough time or resources to study all 11,697 contracts worth 36 billion. So what we did was we chose high-value contracts and a random sampling of small-value contracts to get to nearly 60% of total value. In other words, it's a representative sample that's unbiased towards small samples, but looks at high-value transactions, all high-value transactions. So here is a technical list of the criteria that we used for sampling. Here's how many contracts there are in our sample by size. Most are less than 500,000 pesos. That's the left bar. And the right bar, which shows you the number of contracts greater than 10 million pesos. That's our high-value contracts. And in between is a random sampling of small value contracts. In terms of the variables that we collected 120 variables and 11 item level variables. And we checked this data as much as humanly possible. So we checked this at least 5 times, so we are assured of the data quality. We know that no data set is perfect, but this was the possibly best that we could do, given the auditors and the accountants that we engaged in our rigorous review process of this data. And so we go into the technical analysis, right? We asked 5 questions about COVID-19 purchases. Are procurement documents available and complete? Are uploaded documents consistent? What did the government buy under the first Bayanihan Act? And who bought what? How long did the typical coronavirus-related procurement take under the Bayanihan to heal as one act? And is the government getting a reasonable price for what is bought? So to discuss the first 3 questions, I'd be happy to welcome my colleague Ella.
Thanks, Ken. Hi, everyone. Good morning. So to start off, to determine completeness and availability of procurement documents, we consider the transaction as complete in documentation when it has all 3 required supporting documents uploaded and available online. Specifically, if there's an annual procurement plan, a purchase order, and a notice of award, aka APP, PO, and NOAA respectively. As such, we found that 6 transactions worth around 1 billion have either broken web links to documents or are lacking at least an APP, PO, or a NOAA. This represents 13% of the number of transactions and 5% of the value of our sample. In line with this, The most common issue is the lack of an available notice of award, which amounts to 60 contracts worth 244 million. The most significant issue, however, is the number of documents with broken weblinks. 8 contracts worth of 770 million in total, that is to say. Next, we further evaluated document quality and consistency using 15 risk indicators. And we found that more than 66% of goods representing 13.3 billion do not have sufficient descriptions or specifications to enable price comparison. This is significant because determining the price, timing, and quality of procurement rely heavily on the right level of specifications for goods, services, or infrastructure. We also found that almost all contracts lack at least one basic information or field, and around a third of the contracts worth around 6 billion have some form of inconsistency in amounts. We also determined that most transactions, actually all transactions, had dates that were inconsistent across the internal documents of the transactions we reviewed. These risks will be discussed further by my colleague Rueda later on the duration section. Moreover, we also identified that some transactions had significant typographical or mathematical errors and material differences in amounts. There were also transactions with 3 suspended suppliers, which were worth around 700 million pesos. But these are already being resolved by government agencies. More than 700 million worth of transactions have inconsistent supplier information across documents. But I would like to point out that these 3 suspended suppliers we have found are not fully reflected on this presentation. We only indicated 2 on the basis of the available purchase orders found on the GPPB portal. So we will show you model documents existing in the current dataset that we think could serve as some sort of standard in order to unify the type of data and information that should be uploaded on the portal. These documents are from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the Department of Agriculture. Here, as you can see, we consider this as a complete annual procurement plan because it has itemized information in terms of in terms of what items to be purchased and what services to be availed. It also has the right signatures of the people in authority to do so, and the dates are also there. So essentially, this is a sample for what we deem as a complete annual procurement document. Next, this is a complete purchase order form from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, because we also think that it has complete signature, complete information, including information on the document type, supplier, payment, delivery. It has complete attachments and assessment of eligibility documents with PRs and notice to proceed forms. It's adequate in material description or specification. It has proper sequencing of approval, no issues on the integrity of the approvals, meaning there are no manual alterations, no erasures. And of course, there's a breakdown of the purchases and or services to be available. So there's also consistency in information in terms of what is there versus what's on the APP. It's free from, as mentioned earlier, typographical mathematical errors, and these documents are available online. And can be accessed by the public. It has budget tracking number and, of course, the certification of the preparer. The same holds true for the NOAA submitted by the Department of Agriculture. But what's very interesting about this NOAA is that it stands out from the rest or from most of the NOAA uploaded by other entities online, because most NOAAs, as we have discovered, do not have an itemized information regarding their purchases. They just state what amount is awarded to which procuring entity. But this, you can actually cross-reference the procuring activity at an item level via other or against other uploaded documents. So next we will be discussing the value. We found that in terms of the value, we needed to categorize our transactions into 6 major classifications first. We then further grouped each main category into its corresponding subtypes. And we found that of the 20.8 billion in contracts we studied, 99% were from medical goods and services and amelioration goods and services. The rest of the 1% was from construction, ancillary services, utilities, and property leases. We were unable to classify around 2 million worth of contracts because of the lack of data. Furthermore, we were able to identify the top 5 largest categories in terms of amount spent. These categories are specifically the personal protective equipment, rice, laboratory, medical and surgical devices, tools and supplies, and food. So as you can see, most amelioration goods in our sample are rice and food. And again, that subtype, those 2 particular subtypes are part of the top 5 categories, which will be further discussed and analyzed in terms of price comparison by, again, my colleague, Rueda, later. Next. We also identified and determined that there are a total of 205 procuring entities in our sample. The top 10 procuring entities accounted for 89% of the total value. And the major procuring entity is the procurement service from the Department of Budget and Management, which of course makes sense. They account for the 67% of the sample contract value. This is of course followed by the City of Government of Taguig, representing 6% of the value. We also looked into the top 10 suppliers, and they accounted for the 66% of value. The only 3 suppliers with foreign addresses we found in our sample accounted for 12% of the value itself. And these particular transactions are high value in nature because each worth at least 300 million. So here, earlier we mentioned about supplier risk. This is an example of that particular finding. So let's look into this. In the data set, there are actually 3 suspended suppliers that were able to bid on coronavirus-related contracts. Though these are being resolved by government agencies currently, the situation is that, or the profile of this sample is that they did not fully fulfill delivery of suppliers for drugs and medicines with a city and had been sanctioned with a 2-year suspension. But it was able to initiate 700 plus million contract that has since been in the process of cancellation by the Department of Budget and Management. This is actually a possible risk. Having said that, my colleague Rueda will discuss the next sections for the technical analysis presentation. Rueda.
Okay, so with the question of duration, we're asking how long did the typical procurement under Bayanihan Act take? So from award date to end date, it's around 9 days. This means that half of transactions took less than 9 days to occur, while the other half took more than 9 days. So you can see, as per our sample in the next slide, that um, 75% or three-fourths of all transactions took less than 20 days to occur. So you would see on the left side how many transactions took less than a day, 0 to 5 days, 5 to 10 days, and beyond. But as said earlier, there may still be a risk for long time to lapse before a transaction finishes, such as here on the right side, where transactions took more than 100 days. So, however, due to a lack of publicly available data on delivery receipts, we cannot confirm if the delivery of items really did take place within the said time period. Okay, so we can see here on this slide that we also checked other dates mentioned in the documents and found some inconsistencies with the data. You will find negative numbers like the -10 here under the minimum tab uh, assigned to NOAA, the bid sign. So that means that there's a transaction where the bid was signed 10 days before the award date. So that is very unusual. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now let's move on to the final question that is of price. So, is the government getting a reasonable price for what it's bought? So, let's look at the process we did to answer that question. We analyzed samples worth 5.4 billion pesos from our top five subcategories. Uh, each type of item present in our sample, so items of the same quantity, were compared to each other. This means that the purchase price of a small bottle, a small 500 ml bottle of alcohol, is compared to another 500 ml bottle of alcohol. But that 500 ml bottle of alcohol is not compared to a large 5-liter bottle of alcohol. So in the internal price analytics, prices are compared to each other within our own database based on the transactions from our sample set. However, in the external price analytics, prices were compared to market prices found in sources, external market price sources such as the DOH, online suppliers, the Bureau of Customs, DTI. So please note that these external prices were obtained mostly as of September 2020, which may lead you to find um, some differences in prices. Okay, so in the next slide, we'll look at the computation for price deviation and amount deviation. So in order to better understand these formulas, here's a simplified version of what we did. So here are five prices found in the sample databases. So these are prices of face masks. In order to find the typical or median price of a face mask, we arrange these prices in ascending order and find the middle value or the value where half is higher than that number and another half is lower than that number. So as you can see here, 27 is higher than 2 and then 27 is lower than the other two. Okay, so next slide, please. So here we could see where the prices of transactions were at least three times that of the typical or median price. So on the rightmost column, you can see how much more their price is compared to the typical or median price in the data set. So if you can see here, there were surgical masks procured for 1,400 pesos each, and the typical or median price for face masks, according to the dataset, is 26 pesos. So that means that those surgical masks were procured 52 times more than the median price. So these are only internal values, so we could compare them to external market values as well. So looking at the same 1,400 peso face masks, these were compared to the median price of external sources. which is 21 pesos, and it could be said that it's 66 times more expensive than the median price of 21 pesos. So this means that at the price of 1,400 pesos, we could have bought 66 more face masks for the price of that one face mask. So this price may be an anomaly because there may be reasons why the price is so high. It may be because PO incorrectly stated that it's the price of a single mask instead of 100 masks. This is why we must make sure that our material descriptions are well written and double checked before uploading. Okay, next slide, please. Now, after getting the price, we get the amounts per transaction. So in order to um, find possible savings, what we did was we used the typical or median value from earlier, which is 27 pesos, and subtracted it from the prices of higher priced masks. So 36 minus 27, that's 9. And 1,400 minus 27, that's 1,373. We then multiplied them to the amounts that were bought for each and to get the possible savings for each transaction. So that's 9,000 pesos and 1,300, 137,300 pesos. So uh, to see the top possible savings, we have here in our internal comparisons possible savings of at least 4.5 million pesos, with the highest one being a possible 31.6 million peso saving for a single transaction. However, if we compare it with external median amounts from the external median prices, we could have from 11.9 million pesos in savings up to 116 million pesos savings for the purchase of 2,000 pieces of COVID-19 test kits. So that's a really high value. So in order to sum it up, uh, what we could see here is that um, we we looked at 20 billion worth of contracts, 5.4 billion of which had external comparable prices. These were the ones analyzed, and from that smaller subset, what we saw was a possible savings of 319 million to 550 million pesos. And out of the 596 comparable prices we saw that 71% um, of the transactions we looked at were higher than median external market prices. Okay, so that's it for the price. As for the key recommendations, let's move on with that, and Ken will handle that part.
Thank you so much, Rueda. The last part, and this is us wrapping up, are several ways to collaborate to strengthen procurement, given these findings that we have. I already mentioned these key recommendations, but I wanted to hone in on this idea that we need to listen to grassroots procurement monitors. And there are actually a lot of studies in the literature on this, and I'd invite everyone to read the review of related literature that we have, especially from the national level, from the local level, from sectoral levels, from regular procurement and emergency procurement. We think our study contributes to emergency procurement at both the national and local level. Uh, but again, these findings from these wonderful reviews, especially by Aceron Canares and Navarro and Tanghal, will give you a very good idea about deep case studies that determine whether or not open contracting can be inclusive or not. So all of these are really, really good cases to study. Here are these 9 proposed areas in a civic movement to strengthen procurement. First, the civic movement can help verify whether LGUs have submitted their documents in compliance with the Bayanihan Act. Add another layer of consistency at the item level. Publish this dataset regularly. Check supplier eligibility and information. Check if item level prices may be unreasonable. Check if procured items have sufficient technical specifications. to update market prices from secondary sources, similar to what we did, especially of top procured items, complete the data chain from purchases to budgets to delivery to audit at the local and national level, so use linking variables for those, provide real-time operational feedback to planners. A concluding note is that normally, right, we as citizens have both the right and responsibility to involve ourselves in the affairs of our public institutions, no? And we draw inspiration from election integrity movements that watch votes. In a similar fashion, we think we can watch contracts, right? We can watch contracts that determine the ability of government to use the taxpayer money that we contribute for development. We think this is a good way to continue to engage our government institutions. My last point is this. Please read our full report. We will send to this Zoom link in a little while our full report at wesolve.ph/research/strengthening procurement. We are also releasing for public use our open dataset called the Philippine Open COVID Contracts version 1, and including all our code so that you can replicate, you can critique the study, you can comment, and we can work together to strengthen procurement. I look forward to the discussions that we'll have from our discussants and reactors. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Ken, Ella, and Jose of Resolve and Citizens Budget Tracker for that comprehensive and cogent presentation. Maraming salamat din for the offer to not only make the study available, but to make all your data and your codes available for participants and everyone who's interested to scrutinize. So ito po ay incentive para doon sa mga participants natin. You will be given the link once you accomplish the post-event survey mamaya lang. For those who just joined us, we are discussing open contracting data on COVID-19 purchases in the Philippines. How can we collaborate to strengthen procurement? This session is co-organized by VSOLV, CBT, and R2KRN, and is part of the Open Gov Week celebration. We have also invited government discussants, sent them the report ahead of time, and asked them to comment on the implications of the findings of the report and discuss what should be the appropriate next steps. Each of them will be given 5 to 7 minutes of intervention. So to start off, we would like to call on the Executive Director of GPPB, or the Government Procurement Policy Board, Ms. Rowena Candes M. Ruiz. Ms. Ruiz is a lawyer by profession, having received her Bachelor's of Laws degree from San Beda College of Law. Prior to that, she took her pre-law studies at the De La Salle University. She recently also obtained her Master of Laws in Globalization and Development with merit honors at the University of London through a Chevening scholarship. Before assuming the position of Executive Director, she worked at the Department of Budget and Management for more than 10 years, where she last held the position of Director of the Legal Service. So, Attorney Ruiz, please.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being invited to be able to react to the presentation earlier. First off, I guess I want to highlight what was implied in the research. To my mind, what was quite important for the public to know is that the research would not have been possible without the GPPB online portal, without having the data available there. And it's important also to emphasize that the portal was developed precisely in response to the COVID pandemic. We knew, and Ken mentioned it as a start, that there has to be a balance with urgency and accountability, and that's where we think transparency would be very, very helpful. At the time, PhilJeps has some limitations in terms of posting because this is an emergency procurement. PhilJeps was really designed for the regular public bidding, and so we decided to come up with a portal where people, just like the researchers here, would be able to access the data. So that's the first thing I would like to emphasize. Second is it's important to have meaningful engagement like this one because procurement is never as simple as we want it to be. It can be opaque for some, it can be very technical for others. But at the end of the day, it is something that really affects us all, whether you are in government or you're part of the public in general. Because the way we manage procurement in government really tells the difference whether we'll have enough school buildings, whether we'll have enough school desks, tables, chairs, etc. And so one of the things that needs to be really emphasized is how government manage their procurement. Earlier, there was a presentation on, I suppose, the best forms they saw in terms of APP. The BSP was made an example. And to me, that also shows how agencies, procuring entities, manage their procurement. If you have uh, an agency or a head of agency that values how procurement should be strategically implemented, you would have you would have a more strategic and a more refined, streamlined way of procuring for each of the agencies. At the same time, it's very important also to emphasize the need not only for the bidders, for the procuring entities, but also for CSOs and the public to really fully understand public procurement and the rules. Because it's only when we are fully aware of the laws, the rules, the nuances, that we're able to make uh, substantial impact in terms of studies and research. For instance, allow me to note that it was highlighted earlier in the presentation that notice of award did not include any technical specification. Well, because the technical specifications are not meant to be included in the notice of award. The notice of award really does include only the procuring entity, the bidder that won the bidding, and the amount. The technical specifications would be included in other procurement documents. So it's important for us to really fully understand. At the same time, the research to me highlighted two or three important things that we should really work on in government. Number one would be supply chains management. A lot of perhaps of the uh, price variations that resulted in the procurement for COVID items would, to my mind, be a result of supply chain management. There's really global disruptions. That's why one of the things I would want to perhaps ask is that in terms of comparing the prices of the items awarded as against the median price, did you consider the price variation for a given specific time? Because it's very important to note that the first 3 months, I would suppose, of the pandemic, the price variations are really very substantial. So it would not be accurate to compare prices, say, uh, on the third month to the prices on the first month of the pandemic. The second thing is contract management. That's where completeness of the contract, how agencies uh, record their data, submit their documents, whether in the portal or field trips or wherever. And then finally, I think this is also very important is how we should be able to really empower everybody and ready the government for digital transformation. Not everybody, you might be asking why just 205 procuring entities, because there are still very many procuring entities who would not have stable or may not even have internet access in their area. But we did note in the GPPB online portal that a lot of the agencies that posted are from local government units. So that is something that we really welcome. So I guess that's something that we can consider, not just from the government side, but also particularly, from the CSOs, as I can see very well the intent to be able to engage well with government and to have a more meaningful discussion, not only discussion, no, not at the level only of policy papers, of studies like this, but meaningful engagement in terms of being really part of how government takes on the job of public accountability. And so I want to end by saying that this is where the real job really starts. So I would be one in calling on our Commission on Audit to be able to look into this report and see further. Because again, it's important to also highlight that there can be clickbait ads and there can also be clickbait papers, reports that may not fully provide you, a complete story. So it's important to also have the uh, validation at the level of our commission and audit so that they can actually see what happens. Because while there really may be missing web links, maybe the documents uploaded were not complete, that by itself doesn't really mean anything. And that would actually should encourage us to prod further and check, no? What else can be done at the policy level, at the agency level, and even from the public uh, that wishes to engage with the government in this particular endeavors. So thank you again for this opportunity, and I hope this is something that we will all consider. As Ken said, it's part of not only our right but also our responsibility as Filipino citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney Ruiz. And yes, we hope to engage some of the issues that you raise more later on. We also invite the office of Senator Sani Angara, Juan Edgardo M. Angara, or Senator Sani, of the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on the Bayanihan Funds. And with us this morning is the Chief of Staff, Attorney Fatima Lip Panontongan. Attorney Panontongan, please.
Oh, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
yes, good morning. The senator sends his apologies for not being able to attend today because of a previously scheduled commitment. Um, he extends his warm wishes and congratulations to all the co-authors and researchers. Thank you for sharing your study with us. It is true that this pandemic has tested the resilience not just of our whole government bureaucracy and our constituents as well, but also our procurement systems because of the needed medical goods and services. Let me share briefly the results of the 2019 Open Budget Survey, or OBS 2019, which may be also of interest to our participants today. It is important to note that prior to the pandemic, the Philippines, in fact, ranked 10th out of 117 countries in the OBS 2019. Our score, specifically for budget transparency, was the highest in Southeast Asia and higher than the global average of 45 over 100. And the driver of this high score was the increased availability of budget information, marked, for instance, by the online publishing of the mid-year review in a timely manner, and the increased information provided in our enacted GAAs, or our budget laws. In the survey, we scored pretty high in the budget oversight, that's 74 out of 100%. The survey found that Congress had adequate oversight over both the planning and implementation stages of the budget cycle. But they recommended that to make such oversight more effective, Congress ought to debate more on single line items and even have a legislative committee examine in year budget implementation and publish reports thereon. But we scored lowest in terms of public participation. It's only 33% out of 100. But even with that, ours was the highest again in Southeast Asia and higher than the global average of 14 over 100. OBS recommends to expand mechanisms during budget formulation and implementation that engage any civil society organization and member of the public who wishes to participate, actively engage with vulnerable and underrepresented communities directly or through CSOs representing. But of course, all this ranking were based on a pre-pandemic environment. What is critical then is to work on how we can ensure that even during emergencies and crises, such as what we are facing now, our budget and procurement process is as transparent and as open as possible. And this is where your study would be very helpful to the Senate in exercising our oversight functions, especially to the Committee on Finance and Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Public Expenditures. The senator actually intends to convene the oversight committee soon. We could also use this study and any additional inputs from any participants in our forthcoming budget deliberations for the 2022 national budget and in our ongoing monitoring of the implementation of the Bayanihan to Recover as One or Bayanihan 2, which Senator Angara sponsored and defended on the floor. Let me emphasize the learning curve. We note that your study of 20 billion worth of COVID-related procurement was conducted about 4 months after Bayanihan 1 was passed in the last week of March. Thus, it would be interesting to find out if we have improved after the Bayanihan 2 was passed in September of 2020. More or less, the prices of medical goods and services have stabilized now. Director Ruiz mentioned the importance of the price comparison earlier. While the Bayanihan 2 also provided for exemptions from the provisions on the bidding process under the procurement law, it also states that it should be conducted in the most judicious, economical, and expeditious manner. We should also consider that our procuring entities and government agencies were restricted by the community quarantine or CQ. We've been under different levels of CQ for more than a year now. We have worked with Executive Director Ruiz in the passage of the vaccine law, which is also a special procurement law. We are happy actually that somebody so knowledgeable, conscientious, and hardworking is there in GPPB. It would also be interesting to have a study on the vaccine law because we included provisions that would ensure transparency and accountability in the procurement of vaccines and ancillary goods and services there. We're also working with the GPPB in consolidating various procurement reform bills we pending in the Senate. We'll surely consider your study or your report when we hold hearings on the procurement reform measures. I'm especially interested in the emergency procurement rubric developed by Development Gateway and the Global Digital Marketplace, which documents good practices in the different countries. Another question we'd like to ask, and we hope that further studies and policy briefs can be conducted on this. What role can Industry 4.0 technologies, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data analytics play in the endeavor of ours towards more transparent and effective budget and procurement? In any case, we take note of your policy recommendations on how to improve our procurement system in our continuous procurement of COVID-related items and future emergency situations. While your research is on the implementation side, which is under the jurisdiction of the executive department, it is useful for us in the legislative department to know what's happening on the ground so we can introduce the needed reforms in our procurement laws. Congratulations again to our co-authors and researchers. Stay healthy so you can conduct more worthy studies in the future. Thank you.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Panontongan. So there is now that a request for a further study of similar such procurement, especially after Bayanihan 2, and to see whether the system has improved or we have improved. So that's for you, Ken and team. We also invited Director Christine Marie Sontay of the DBM Procurement Service, and she sent a representative, Miss Joanna Macalinaw, Information Technology Officer 1 of the e-Government Procurement Development and Operations Division of the PhilJAP. So, Miss Macalinaw, please.
Good morning, everyone. Here's our reaction for the research. Based on the research provided by the HIVOS Southeast Asia, the two empirical factors related to the PhilJEPs are the completeness and the quality of the documents. Data shows that the 75 transactions worth around 1 billion are lacking documents that were published to the website. These lacking documents can be the annual procurement plan, purchase order, or notice of award. The implementation of modernized PhilJEPs, the central portal for the source of information on government procurement, may mitigate the lack of transparency by posting in the PhilJEPs. procurement information such as procurement mode, project title, funding source, description of the project, approved budget for the contract amount are required by the system. The modernized PhilJEPs also requires the procuring entities to upload public documents like annual procurement plans, purchase request, bid document, bid evaluation document, back resolution, notice of award, notice to proceed, purchase order, or contracts. In this regard, issues on the availability of documents are addressed. But still, the PhilJEP's data are dependent on the uploaded documents and records encoded by the procuring entities and suppliers. The awarding of procurement contracts are given only to the registered suppliers, either red or platinum members. Through registration, the supplier information is required. Thus, inconsistencies on the supplier's information are addressed. The modernized PhilJEPs captures the offered prices by the merchants during the bidding evaluation process. During contract management, the MPhilJEPs can set per milestone on delivery of goods or services and release of payment records. Currently, the MPhilJEPs follow the Unified Accounts Code Structure or the UACS since the system is also integrated to the Budget Treasury and Management System or the BTMS of the Department of Budget and Management. We have an open data section in PhilJEPs, and we are currently um, upgrading our open data, wherein the centralized procurement data and the information needed by the public and independent observers can be retrieved through the modernized PhilJEPs. The data will be available in JSON, HTML, or CSV formats. We are targeting to deploy the beta system on the fourth quarter of 2021. That's it, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Macalinaw, and also thanks Attorney Panuntongan again and Director Rowena Ruiz. We will engage the issues again when we go to the open forum later on. We solved and CBT pointed out several concerns while our discussants offered ways to address them, or in fact discuss ways that they are already being addressed. Paano naman po ang iba pang mga ahensya ng gobyerno and organizations outside of government? How can they or how can we step in, step up, and collaborate to improve procurement policy and practice? We have two reactors to offer some practical suggestions on this. Kagaya po ng ating mga discussants, they have each 5 to 7 minutes. So I would like to call first Yusek Christian Ablan, Undersecretary for Finance, Legislative Affairs, and Freedom of Information of the Presidential Communications Operations Office, or PCOO, and concurrently the Director of the FOI Project Management Office. Yusek Ablan is a lawyer by profession and currently represents the country at the International Conference of Information Commissioners, or the ICIC. So, Yusek Chris.
Thanks, Miss Joy. Good morning to everyone. Good morning to Ken. Good morning to ED Ruiz and everyone who is attending this webinar. Happy Open Government Partnership Week to everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be a reactor with this presentation. Congratulations, Ken and team, for your report on the Citizen Budget Tracker so far as the COVID-19 expenses or budget is concerned. And likewise to ED Weng for attending. I mean, this is open government at its finest, starting with the research made by the team of Ken with the Citizens Budget Tracker, from day one of the CQ all the way up to today, culminating with this webinar wherein the results and findings of the report was actually presented, and you had a government officials coming from GPPB, PhilJEPs, responding also to the findings and results. It's really fantastic, and it's a really good opportunity for us to celebrate open government. Ladies and gentlemen, you might be asking, especially our friends from the Senate and our friends from the Commission on Audit, why is there a need for citizen groups like Ken's to really track how government spends taxpayers' money, how government spends public monies? There's GPPB already. There's COA, yeah, an independent constitutional commission whose mandate is to check on government expenditure. You have the Senate and the House who have committees on finance and committee on appropriations to check if government money, public money is spent properly. Why involve the citizens? The answer there is from a book I actually read, which is Range by David Epstein. And in that book, he was talking about the outsider advantage. And this is where citizens come in. Sometimes we in government and also in the private sector, we fall for the Einstein Effect. And the Einstein Effect is that predisposition to solve a problem in a specific manner, even if other methods are available. That's where citizens come in. We know that the Senate has its researchers, COA has its auditors. Sometimes it takes people like Ken and his friends in Resolve and he, he was no, to think outside the box and present. And that's what we had this morning. And I hope my friends in government, my colleagues in the executive service continue to open up, just like the way GPPB opened up its portal by March, April of 2020, and let it be subject to scrutiny by the public. And at the end of the day, if the information is not available, that's where freedom of information comes in. Just in case that there are some gaps, then FOI can fill in when the citizen can request it directly from the agency. So this is just a good continuation of open government partnership we have had for the past 10 years. May we continue to have collaboration between government and citizens. And we, Edi Weng and I, will always be here. Thank you so much. Good morning and congratulations once again.
Thank you very much, Yusek Chris, and thanks for reminding everybody of one of the biggest pending work that we still have to finish, which is passing the FOI into law, right? Okay, so we have another reaction. This time it's a video reaction from Mr. Redempto Parafina, or Don Don, who is currently the managing director of the Affiliated Network for Social Accountability in East Asia and the Pacific, or ANSA-EAP Foundation. As an international development practitioner, Don Don has a recognized track record in civil society networking, capacity building, and advancing innovations in citizen participation in governance. So can we please play Don Don's video?
Morning. Let me start this reaction by telling you about my reaction when I first learned about this data policy research on procurement that Ken's group has undertaken. I think that was January this year. My first reaction was, wow, this is similar to what we did back in 2006, but much better. In 2006, as young procurement monitors from the civil society, we also collected volumes of procurement data, contracts, purchase orders, delivery receipts, etc., from a number of procuring entities, national, local. We processed the data in Excel down to the item level, compared prices based on comparable units, and recommended to GPPB that procurement monitoring be organized like that. It should be able to alert authorities on possible significant deviations from procurement rules, or alert us on scandalously high prices. Sadly, that research with its recommendations remained as such, just research and recommendations. Nothing followed. But this current research that Ken and his teammates were able to pull off, I think, has much to offer. and could definitely provide a solid platform for engagement, collaboration, and advocacy for better public procurement, especially or even in times of emergency like the COVID emergency. So, in what ways? First, I think the research has a solid design and methodology and presents credible findings that the public needs to know. The careful analysis on the completeness of the documentation, the quality of the purchases, how long it took from award to delivery, top suppliers and contractors, revealing two blacklisted companies winning contracts, and especially the prices, revealing up to 5,200% price discrepancy. Wow. So this gave us vital information on how public resources were used. I particularly like the formulation of the 15 risk indicators as they could assess the quality and integrity of transactions at the contract level, even at the item level, which complements an existing government procurement monitoring mechanism like the APCPI, which is up there at the systems level. Of course, for the public, they would look for the status of the project contracts and the purchased items more than the analysis of the systems. At any rate, it is actually the job of the GPPB PSO to do this kind of research monitoring. So they must be happy and grateful that this civil society research team has helped them with it. Imagine the many hours and days, and of course the high-level expertise is spent to produce this research. This is indeed a big contribution to the work of GPPB PSO, which I hope they will acknowledge and value. That brings me to the second point. Putting this research to good use depends on GPPB. Now, if they will see, or if they really see the value of this effort with the design and the method and the modes of analysis, the PSO must present and discuss it with the board proper and move to adopt it as a supplementary monitoring tool. Budget should eventually be allocated to roll out this tool in key procuring agencies, if not all. Though the research is focused on COVID-19 procurements, which were mostly negotiated and not through competitive bidding, it could also be used for monitoring regular procurements. Perhaps as a side note, it is needed also that we automate the methods used in this research. This, of course, assumes the availability of the data in friendly open formats, which the research has already identified as a big problem. The final point I want to make is in the scenario that the government does nothing with the research. It just keeps it on the table and let it gather dust. So what can the civil society on its own do to utilize this important research? How does it not become idle like what happened before in our procurement monitoring research? I guess the civil society groups that are in this forum would be responsible for ensuring that, especially the R2KRN. The proactive use of this research for advocacy and engagement will further the calls for better monitoring of public procurement and create a bigger constituency for it. Journalists will also help simplify and popularize the ways procurement monitoring is done through this research. I honestly don't know how effective civil society engagement in public procurement monitoring would be at this time and in the future. But I'm just happy that a new generation of civil society monitors of public procurement has emerged and they did a good job producing this research during the pandemic. Thank you. Good morning.
Okay, maraming salamat sa ating presenters, discussants, and reactors. They gave us a lot to chew on. And for sure, our participants have equally rich insights to share, if not questions to ask. Aside from those joining us on Zoom, we're also live streamed on Facebook, specifically on the pages of WeSolve, Citizens Budget Tracker, and the Right to Know Right Now Coalition. Again, we request everyone to please mute your microphone so as not to distract our speakers. Except for maybe one or two, maybe three, we won't be able to give everyone screen time. However, if you have any comments or questions, please put them in the chat box or on the comment section of Facebook. We're taking note of them, and we're pulling together, organizing the questions as according to categories or themes, so we can be more efficient and manage time better. Some of the questions sent ahead of time have already been answered by the presentation, so we'll not repeat them. But there are questions that may have been answered, pero there are reiterations of questions kasi. So I would like to ask Ken and team to talk a little bit more, konti lang ha, about the data, specifically how you treated external price comparison, because there are the concerns have already been surfaced in terms of the timing, like at which point did you gather those external prices you used to compare for the internal prices. So Mr. Gabriel Domingo, for instance, is very interested in this question, and some of our discussants also raised this question. You already answered some in on the chat box, but probably it will be good for everyone to hear again how the treatment was done for this.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Joy, and thank you for the great question. And in fact, we go to great pains in our paper to show what the limits are, because the more explicit you are about the limits of your method, the stronger the empirical findings become. And I wanted to show you actually what the external price data set looks like. So this is a data set that we compiled from many different sources. It's something like 3,900 rows of price data. Only some of them have time series. And what this means and what this implies in terms of yung price external analytics is it really is a limit to the study. You can't compare. So as of September 2020 po yung pag-gather namin ng information na to, it's also possible that the prices have changed. So you're exactly right po, and that's indeed part of the limits of our study. At the same time, the message naman po that we want to send is, even if nag-change yung time series, kung nag-change yung presyo over time, it's still important to double check. And what is very good, I think, about our data set that tinawag ko po siyang labor of love, kasi hundreds of hours po talaga yung iginugol namin yung oras dito, ay available po lahat ng ito for the public. We've identified all these transactions that need double checking. So it's easier for everyone in the Senate, in COA, in GPPB, the procuring entities, any citizen group, any data analytics group, any social accountability group to check. So we're very transparent with both our limits and the data set that we use. It's also reproducible. So in-upload po namin yung code. Ay, hindi ko po ba na-share yung aking screen? In-upload po namin yung code po na ginamit namin. So you can replicate, critique the findings of the study. So yun po yung aking short answer. Wondering if Jose or Ella want to add.
Jose, Ella, do you want to add here? Okay, so maybe mamaya. But thank you again to Ken and team for that, and really the generosity. And we hope that more researchers will do as you're doing. Of course, it's not required at the moment, but if private persons and private researchers like yourselves can do this, then certainly government research institutions should be able to do this as well. Share the data, share the code, so that things can be scrutinized and others can check for themselves and draw maybe similar or different conclusions from the same sets of data that are being used. So marami tayong mga tanong now. This one is a very good question. This is from Ms. Annie Heron of PS Link and Public. Can we be proactive to prevent corruption and fraud? The findings of the study are compelling enough. Other than further verification and validation, what will the government do in the immediate to hold to account those behind those transactions? Of course, it's already been said that there's no definitive judgment on corruption or irregularity having happened in these cases, except that there is need to look further into at least some of these transactions. So I would like to ask probably our government discussant, can we start with Director Attorney Luis? Do you have do you have any response to this?
Hello, yes. As I mentioned earlier, I think this is when the real work starts. The paper alone, I don't think can be sufficient evidence for anybody to be found guilty of anything, no, at this point in time. What it does really to my mind is to really be able to cue in congressional oversight committees, to COA, and even the procuring entities themselves. One example, which I forgot to mention earlier, on how important transparency is and how uh, forums like this and also the ability of the public to be able to access data and do something with the data allows government to actually do its job. One good example of that, which was part of the paper, are the blacklisted entities that were, I guess, highlighted by a journalist, if I'm not mistaken, in one instance. And the reason why that journalist was able to find out that one of the entities to which the contract was awarded to was it was able to see the blacklisted entities through our online blacklisting portal. Again, this is an in-house development project of the GPP-BTSO precisely to allow the public to be able to partake in scrutinizing public contracts. So you are able to see which bidders would have been blacklisted. And what happened actually, and I don't know if the field reps representative be able to validate this, is one of the contracts was actually suspended, terminated rather, by the agency that found out after. No, this is one of the ways by which we are able to hold people accountable. It doesn't end here, and it should never end here, because otherwise there will just be various a number of studies will be conducted, and then they might have a different result, and they would say this would now be evidence that there's actually no corruption, etc. We don't want that. We don't want anarchy. We need to be able to also trust in our institutions. That's why after this there should really be an opportunity for the procuring entities, more than COA to my mind, for the procuring entities. So I hope you can also share your report to all of the procuring entities to revisit the processes, because I don't think the value is only into looking into fraud, but also looking into best practices. You've noted best practice from the BSP and the Department of Agriculture. Department of Agriculture, for one, is one of the highest, in terms of volume and amount procurers in the agency. So it's good that they already have those best practices in their operation. So this is something that the other procuring entities can also embed into their internal processes for them to do better procurement management, strategic procurement management in the future.
Okay, Attorney Ruiz, you were muted at towards the end.
Sorry, I guess what I forgot what I already said, but I guess at the end of the day, it's important for us to understand where uh, what 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 we should be able to do as part of the public, what the procuring entity, for instance, should be able to do with this research. On the part of the GPPB, we do not audit. That's we are a policy office, so in terms of what can we do with this report, there are already ongoing studies, no, not exactly this one, but there are already ongoing studies and proposals from the GPP-BTSO actually address some of the gaps noted here. As I mentioned earlier, the fact alone that we have a study months after the start of the pandemic goes to show that data were available. I would suppose without government also intervention to the GPPB online portal, the data would have been available at the very earliest, I guess, at the start of this pandemic because people were working from home, etc. So there are already measures in place. We just need to be able to also engage, no, keep us engaged so that we are always on our feet and so that we will always be mindful of what else we can do. Because at the end of the day, it's important for us to understand the gaps, uh, identify which particular agency can do better so that there's no duplication in addressing this. On the part of the GPPB, we do not audit, but we can introduce policy rules and guidance for the procuring entities, not only in terms of issuances, but also in terms of capacity building and also effective monitoring. So those are the things that we will be engaging on. I don't have enough time, and I don't think we have enough time to be able to discuss all of the many reform initiatives we are doing at the GPPB and the Technical Support Office. What I would do is for you to also to engage us. Look at our website, see what we are doing right now, what we can do to participate in the things we are doing. We will be finishing with our MAPS assessment. That's the assessment of how procurement, how our country has been procuring over the past years, you know, the systems, the procedure, involvement of civil society, etc. Legal framework, all of these things will be assessed. And that would be an important guide for us to refine the proposals and the ongoing projects we are already doing to make better public procurement. That's on our end. But that's not just us. One thing we also have to remember is procurement isn't just the role of GPPB. I mentioned earlier there's supply chain. So that's the role of government as well as the market forces. Investment policy also has an important role in terms of supply chains management. Contract management is the role of the agencies themselves. So these are the things that we have to do together. Indeed, we cannot work in silos, but it is important for us to understand what we can actually do within our government, within the agencies, and the public, how they can help their government. I think that's what I would like to emphasize.
Okay. Thank you very much. Attorney Ruiz, marami ako nakikita sa chat box and I have messages also here. But there is a question that's very related to this and I would like to call on her. Miss Malu Mangahas has a question and Malu, I think you should ask the question yourself.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Actually, I wanted to just lurk and follow the proceedings because I was so impressed from the beginning with the research of Ken and group. And I think we should emulate and move forward the practice amongst the Right to Know Coalition members. Anyway, my question has to do with the problem of not just transparency, but accountability. The report actually disclosed certain red flags. The 3 suppliers that were suspended or blacklisted that had been awarded contracts, and the top 10 suppliers that won contracts. There is a concept called net financial contracting capacity when government agencies review suppliers. And did they pass the test at all? I mean, I'm looking at it from a supply-demand side equation that is procurement, but also possible corruption. The group is very careful not to raise the point of corruption as yet, but I think at day's end, there should be some exemplary justice. I mean, here, on the part of the procuring agencies that may have been unwittingly part of a bad deal, but also on the part of suppliers who may have actually to be called out.
Yes, Malu, did you finish or na-mute ka bigla?
That is the question I posted on the chat actually. All right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, I don't not to dump everything on you, Attorney Ruiz, but these are also very weighty concerns. So, just to you said you're not an audit unit, but these are things that are medyo laki talaga. And I also see si Miss Annie Heron again, that's they said, because we're in the time of pandemic, these concerns should be given pandemic level attention. So just I suppose maybe an advice, if it's not GPPB, who, which agency, which unit should be alerted, and be given all of these reports for a revisit.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, I would highly encourage the group to give the procuring entities for the contracts covered a copy of the research. Because it's important also to look at it from the point of view of internal controls of the agency. Some of the, I don't think legislation is always the answer. A lot of the things we can do to improve public procurement goes into institutional setups that the agency themselves can change without need for legislation. That's number one. Number two, there's also need to also change the mindset of government employees, people in government. We need to see procurement as a strategic way for us to be able to achieve our sustainable development goals. It's not just procedure, policies, and rules. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's easier for government agencies, particularly their heads, to be able to really look at procurement as an important strategy instead of just complying with procurement rules. We have to really move away from compliance and look at best practices. On the part of the GPPB, how are we able to help on that? We can help in terms of policy, as I mentioned. We one of the participants commented we need pandemic level response. The fact alone that we were able to develop the online blacklisting portal in-house without the help of any consultant, so that the public will be able to see which entities are blacklisted in time for the pandemic. The fact alone that we also developed together with the help of the USAID, the GPPB online portal, shows really our commitment towards this. But it should not end there. I do agree with that. We should do better in terms of capacity building. We need to be able to properly capacitate our procurement practitioners. For all you know, maybe some of the discrepancies noted were just lack of knowledge, lack of the capacity. Perhaps they were just overly tired, especially for some government agencies who've really been in the headlines, at the beginning of this pandemic. But apart from GPPB providing capacity building programs, apart from GPPB providing the policies, apart from the agencies improving on their internal controls and doing more strategic procurement, I think it's also important for for the Commission and Audit to look into this, and the Office of the Ombudsman, in terms of really identifying individuals who who really did colluded, who perhaps there was fraud, perhaps there were really illegal activities in these transactions, which would necessitate further validation and auditing on the part of these entities. So I think what I would have to hammer on is that when you look at the government, it's just not one action. There are various actions that you can get from government. If you need more access to data, more open data, you would have a specific agency that would allow for that. If you need to file cases to individuals and look into this, you also have a specific agency to do that. On the part of the GPBB, we can only work on the mandate given to us under the law, and that's really providing policy guidelines to the agency, capacity building, and monitoring so that our policies are better informed. In terms of making people accountable, hindi po kasi yun ang GPPB. But it doesn't mean we don't have any role to play. We have a very big and important role to play. And that's why we are engaging with individuals such as Ken and his group so that we can learn better. But it doesn't mean we're not doing anything. It only means that we are open to collaborating because, in fact, we are doing already something and we want to learn more and do things better.
Sige, thank you very much again, Attorney Ruiz. I would like to, I wanted to call sana si Yusek Chris, but nawala siya, baka nawala ng signal. But I would like to call on Miss Macalina from the DBM Procurement Service. Ms. Macalino,
Yes po.
yeah,
Ah,
yes.
we can comment po dun sa yung modernized field jobs po kasi may guide the procuring entities in posting details since it has validation like you cannot you cannot post a contract amount that is greater than the approved budget, something like that. And i-guide din po niya yung mga users to i-require po kasi niya yung users to upload relevant documents such as the NOAA. So required na po siya. So magiging depende na lang po talaga sa agency kung tama ba yung i-upload niya na mga dokumento. So meron pong mga ganoon na mga features sa modernized field jobs po.
Yeah,
Ayun
and
po.
you said this will be rolled out by
2022 po, ma'am.
2022. Okay, sige. Yeah, but we're sure that some of the findings of the research also alerted you to the common things, the common problems. Kasi we also do FOI practice, and that's what we see. Yung mga everyday things, the ordinary things na might be overlooked, pero yun yung these are the small things that can be improved, and they go a long way. So
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So thank you. We I Ken, Ella, and Jose, do you want to give a response to what our guests have said?
Sure, ma'am. Inviting siguro si Jose or Ella to speak a little bit. Okay. As we're waiting for them to connect, una po muna ako.
Okay.
So I wanted to share with the group actually some of the more detailed findings that we have about data quality and some suggestions about data quality. So it's actually present in our paper. There's no need to read the whole text. Pero yung one key finding that we have, di ba, contract level lang po yung currently available at least sa GPPB portal. But most of the analysis that was useful for price comparisons needed us to encode 2,800 items, check it 5 times in order to generate a good enough item level analysis. So I think an item level data set will be very, very crucial to improving not just siguro the compliance then of agencies, but also the ability of procurement watchers to monitor. The second item po is a more stringent submission protocol and publication policy for the GPPP portal. Na-mention din po namin dito yung mga paano kaya kung pwede pong ipa-encode sa procuring entities yung item level entries with legal force and the submission of sworn declarations with digital signatures. It will make the procuring entities more accountable for data integrity, completeness, and veracity. Yung third po, to maintain, di ba, iba po yung, di ba, mag-check or maglalagay ng encoding protocol yung procuring entity, sila yung mag-encode dun sa website. Pero I think mahalaga po na magkaroon ng continued engagement with researchers, journalists, CSOs in a common group that will check the quality of the data. I think what we're quite proud of also in the research methodology was we use a very specific type of checking ng data quality po. So it's 15 steps. It's quite easy to follow, and then people can work together to be able to help in disclosing the type of clean data set that we propose po and we publish today. So ideally po yung open format and open data na ito would be regularly shared. So yun po yung mga suggestions namin. Aside from yung mga data sets po na dapat i-link across budget, procurement, delivery, and audit. Ito medyo mas mahirap. Pang later po siguro yun. Pero kasi yung focus on data submission Posible po yata, posible po dahil sa transparency rin ng GPPB, transparency ng PhilJeps, na makagawa po ng ganitong klaseng open data release. So, again, inviting everyone to comment and critique yung aming dataset.
Okay, thank you. Jose, you have anything to add?
Wants to add.
As for me naman po, very thankful po ako to GPTB din na na-release po lahat ng data na yan during the pandemic. So we were able to do our research. Yung panawagan po ni Ken of having item level data is very much appreciated po kung mangyayari. And aside from that, sana po magkaroon din po ng more collaboration with different agencies so that makita nga po, maging transparent, maging mas madali makuha ang data kung saan po nanggagaling para mas madaling makikita yung different steps na nangyayari dun sa buong procurement process. Right now po kasi, given po na yung when it comes to delivery receipts, nagkukulang din po since hindi po siya publicly available. Baka po mas maging transparent po when it comes to the whole procurement process kung maisama din po siya.
Yes.
Yun lang po.
Salamat, Jose. I can see James Angup has his hand raised. James is from the DBM Procurement Service. Please. I think you're muted, James. Okay, sige. Okay, I will just read sa chat. There is the modernized field jobs have a functionality to invite observers to a particular bidding. Hindi daw niya ma-unmute sarili niya. Can the tech help, please? Can we unmute James?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. For a while lang, James, ha?
Hello. Good
Okay.
morning. I'm James, by the way. I'm the current OIC Division Chief of the AGP. So, John and I are in the same team. So currently, as mentioned earlier, in terms of yung proposal namin modernized field jobs, so from APP hanggang contract management is nasa modernized field jobs na siya. So we're hoping na we have more record and documents na ma-upload sa system. So ang challenge lang, if ever we encounter another pandemic, we are hoping na yung data ng procurement, regardless if it's an emergency or a regular bidding, kasi may alternative, may ANP naman at may emergency case naman sa modernized field jobs is credit post. Ang minimum requirement lang ng field jobs is we make it sure na yung supplier na magpa-participate for the particular bidding should be registered in the field jobs para ma-capture natin lahat ng data. And then in regards sa yun nga, yung granularity ng data, yung gusto natin makita yung line by line. So, line by line ang proposal ng bawat supplier. So, nandoon na rin. Actually, sa current system, mayroon na rin gano'n na data. Na, example, yung naka-multi-lap, tapos malalaman natin kung sino yung mag-participate for that bid, sino na manalo. Meron din tayong gano'n na data. The problem lang is that as I observe, I check the database from talaga back-end, yung line by line. May instances talaga na hindi naka-reflect yung mga data kung sino yung nananalo sa particular na line item. Kaya very it will be a challenge to sa end users natin sa agent sa procuring entity to talaga ilagay nila yung data para at least pag once the field jobs is will generate a report, at least hindi na yung mano-mano na ikukulit pa na yung part na ginagawa ni Ken na mano-mano na kinukulit yung data. Sa baga, si PhilJobs ngayon, kasi we are also nagde-develop ng open data ngayon. Open data which is pwede nyo lang directly makuha yung data from a graphical presentation or a raw data para doon na kayo mag-pull real time. So hindi na kayo dapat hihingi doon. Hindi na kayo hihingi at request, mapupull niyo yung data. And you can also integrate that data to other systems also kung kailangan nyo integrate to other systems. So yun. In terms of, so I'm hoping that the modernized field jobs will improve talaga yung completeness ng data as you mentioned yung doon sa research niya. And then for they're aiming also for the less paper, yung pag-generate ng PO, PR, we are expecting or we are looking forward for a more digital na format at saka isa lang yung format na gagamitin para mas streamline yung procurement process natin. So yun, so PR, PO, NOAA, NTP, and such. Yun yung in-envision ng field jobs to streamline the documents na nire-require without compromising the 9184. Dapat kompleto pa rin yung mga document. Sa amin lang, para mas papadali yung proseso, mas ina-automate natin yung pag-generate ng document. So yun, may roadmap rin for that. And we're hoping na we will give you more data coming from the Philippines.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. James Anwood, the OIC sa DBMPS. I have another question here, and I think this is for PhilJobs and GPPB in particular. How may you integrate or interface procurement data and work together on data publication? We also know of the milestones on publication policy and the partnership between GPPB and PhilJobs, both in open contracting. Kumusta po yun? I think siguro may elements na nabanggit din si Mr. James, pero what's the status there na Mr. Angub and Attorney Ruiz?
I'll let James respond because this particular commitment I think is for PhilJobs, for the one that's being asked. So I'll let him.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, in terms of integration for the data publication, currently we are working on the integration of the BTMS, which is Lakay DBM. So BTMS is more on the creating a purchase request and generating a purchase order, DV, GRM, yung pag-release ng payments every payment milestone. So may ganun tayong functionality din sa PhilJobs. In terms of publication, okay. Currently, may ginagawa na kami na open data. Say it's a different system, which is yung open data na yun, kinonsolidate namin lahat ng data way back 2000, yung kaluma-lumaan data, at saka sa bagong system. Medyo yung pagpasok ko kasi is medyo, the databases is medyo wasak-wasak. So kailangan ma-streamline at kailangan maibahay sa isang database. Parang yun yung ginagawa namin. So by that, once na maayos namin yun, yung the PhilJobs open data, yung bagong version ng open data, it will be real-time, publicly accessible na yun sa PhilJobs website. So, lang may at least siguro other reports na in-aggregate, meron lang at least siguro a delay of 1 day kasi pino-process yun at the end of the midnight. And then the aggregated reports will be available next day. Yun yung ongoing namin ngayon na open data, and we are targeting to have a beta site on the third quarter ng taon na to. So we will announce it officially once na ma-release namin yung beta site. And then we also have we are doing a centralized ticketing and ticketing system and yung lahat ng material and resources on how to use the PhilJobs. So instead of having a link sa kabilang website, so dapat may isang interface, dapat may isang website na tayo na mag-tikpan. By that, mas may improve natin yung paano pag-gamit ng system of PhilJobs. Kasi until now, marami pa rin nagtatanong kung paano gamitin yung PhilJobs. And that is why we have also nag-effort din yung team ng PhilJobs to introduce into the nation na PhilJobs is existing, especially sa mga suppliers na marami pang suppliers na hindi nag-exist ng PhilJobs. So yun yung effort. So yun lang po.
Yeah,
and
maraming...
sorry. Pwedeng mag-add on konti. So we have also an integration part also with the BIR, SEC, PTI, TCAB, and the DAR, yung integration with the validation na tawag ito? Eligibility document, sorry. Kasi sa ngayon yung pag-register ng Platinum is parang hinihingi pa rin yung mga documents na during the bidding, di ba, hinihingi pa rin yung set na document and such. Ang sa amin, we are planning to streamline it system to system na bina-validate na automatically dapat yung mga eligibility documents ng bawat supplier. So yun din yung roadmap namin.
Okay, yes, thank you. And we really look forward to all of these plans happening. And yung sa third quarter, which is soon, dun sa beta version nyo, we're looking forward to that. This will be the last question, I think, and this has been asked earlier on. I've been saving this, and I had to go scroll back dun sa chat. This was from Arvin Alier. Are there programs or initiatives within the government to partner with groups like WeSolve so that good research like this can be funded and supported with resources in terms of access to data, immersion to the processes, etc., so not necessarily money, so that changes can actually be implemented as needed? So I think Attorney Ruiz, you'll be the best person also to respond to this.
Yes, in terms of how, I suppose the question is how CSOs can also engage with the GPPB. We do have, we started inviting CSO po sa aming mga forums in 2020. And we're hoping to come up with the registry of CSOs, and we wish to help reignite the participation of CSO observers sa ating procurement process. Isa pong ginawa ng GPPB very recently is that because we noted that even before the pandemic, meron pong talagang pattern of decline in the participation of CSO in our public bidding processes. So what we did, especially during the pandemic, since marami pong mga online, but we took advantage of this opportunity to mandate the procuring entities to provide online access to observers. So yung pong mga limitations ng physically being present in the agencies to be able to observe, mami-minimize po yon at masasagot yan ng pagbibigay ng online access sa public biddings na kinoconduct ng ating mga procuring entities, whether it's done physical or whether it's done online. So isa po yun po yung start ng aming engagement with CSO. And we do have ongoing proposals right now. Hindi ko pa lang po ma-identify details because this would require GPPB approval, but on the part of the TSO, we have one or two projects po that we wish to engage with CSO as part of monitoring and as part of being observers sa public bidding. At the same time, we're also been actively inviting CSO po in our focus group discussion for policy recommendations to the board. So oftentimes po we conduct FGDs para po malaman yung policy impact ng aming mga recommendations sa board for the rules na i-approve ng board, so we engage them. And we also do provide, right now I'm just not sure with the date, capacity development program for CSO. Kasi as I mentioned earlier in my initial comment to the presentation, importante po that we actually know the procurement process and rules. Hindi po pwedeng second hand or hindi pwedeng assumptions or impressions lang on what or how public procurement should be done. It should be really coming from the point of view of the GPP Business Technical Support Office para po maintindihan ng observers ano yung dapat nilang tignan para malaman ng CSO ano ba dapat ang babantayan, because it's not only important to be able to have access to data. Data alone is not power. Understanding how the data and what the data means is much more important than access to my mind. So, part po yan ng aming proyekto para mas ma-empower ang ating mga CSO. So, yun po. And if they want to engage with us, they can always contact us, contact my office, the GPPB, and you can see how you can better also partake in the projects that we are working on. The more involved, the more inclusive, I think, is better insofar as public procurement is concerned.
Okay, thank you very much, Attorney Ruiz, and thank you very much to everybody. Maganda ang ating talakayan at nagpapasalamat po tayo sa lahat ng ating mga resource persons at sa ating participants dito sa Zoom at sa FB live stream. We request the participants to please accomplish the post-event survey. The link, I think, will be flashed on your screen and also posted on the FB chat box and comment section, and will also be emailed to you. The research done by VSOLV and the Citizens Budget Tracker assessed COVID-19 related procurement for completeness in terms of documentation, covering so many things from web links to notices of award, quality or whether the goods procured were backed by sufficient material descriptions or specifications to enable comparisons, value of goods and services procured and which suppliers got those contracts and in what proportion to total lots, the duration of procurement, albeit the assessment was limited to the time it took from the award to delivery and no confirmation of actual physical delivery was done, and price or how internal pricing compared with the median externally researched price of goods procured. The research found weaknesses, lapses, inconsistencies, and gaps, not necessarily implying irregularity, but definitely raising concerns that need to be looked into further to ensure that quality of government procurement, especially during emergencies, remains high. Our government resource persons also explained why some of the things happen this way and how things can be made better next time. GPPB and PhilJEPs, for instance, assured us that things are being done to address these concerns, and we're already looking forward to the beta version of PhilJEPs come the third quarter, and also the full roadmap that Mr. Angub discussed earlier. Our reactors and participants emphasized also the importance of quality information, quality data, and having access to this. Not just data, but also access to the processes so that those who want to observe actually understand how things happen and how citizen monitoring is essential for the early detection of gaps and inconsistencies even before they become something more serious. Our next step is open-ended. Not that open-ended because there are actual plans, but we hope that the processes of collaboration will happen. We hope that the process will be open so we can all contribute towards better procurement policy and practice, and ultimately better service delivery for Filipinos. Kikilalanin natin ang mga kailangang gawin at ipagpatuloy ang pagmamatsyag, hindi upang magpahiya o manlait, ngunit para maitama ang mali, maisaayos ang sistema ng procurement at kung nauukol ay panagutin ang nararapat. So mula po sa mga co-organizers ng online session na ito, ang WeSolve, ang Citizens Budget Tracker, at ang Right to Know Right Now Coalition, maraming salamat sa inyong pakikilahok ngayong umaga. As a final bit for our session this morning, may I request everybody to please turn on your cameras so that we can take photos of everyone. And I would like to ask Miss Erica Blas to cue us in for the photo session.